Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's so nice to see you. I was just wondering, how many people in the audience stand up if you modeled for Jim Bama? If you were one of the people. Oh yeah, Lynn, you have to stand. So great to see all of you. My name's Susan Barnett. I am the Margaret and Dick Scarlett Curator of Western American Art for the Whitney Western Art Museum here at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. I've been here a little over a year now and have been working on this exhibition pretty much since I started. Just a little brief background. When James Bama moved with his wife Lynn from New York to Wyoming in 1968, he began making photographs of his new friends and neighbors. Old-timers, children, rodeo performers, reenactors, native activists and elders, powwow dancers, ranchers, and outfitters. Although Jim Bama viewed his photographs as references for his paintings, they are insightful and compelling works that absolutely stand on their own. Together, they comprise a portrait of the contemporary West. They touch on themes such as the resilience and transfer of traditions, the formation and expression of identities, and the relationships an artist establishes with his subjects. I think that Bama's photos retain more spontaneity, context, and dissonance than his paintings, although I love his paintings, don't get me wrong. He had such a great eye that he captured fascinating information with the lens that may not have been always his conscious intent. In addition to the exhibition that'll be in the John Bunker Sands Gallery through October 4th, a complimentary exhibition is on view at the American Heritage Center at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, Wyoming from November 13 to April 10. Also, in collaboration with the American Heritage Center, we will publish a catalog featuring more than 100 of Bama's photographs, and that'll be ready in late spring. So Bama had two careers. His first career was as an illustrator. He's best known for his amazing illustrations of Doc Savage. And as you can see in this series of pictures, he was already using the same process that he used as an artist, taking photographic source images and really hewing pretty closely to those source images, shooting in black and white so that he could make the color completely his own. So when he and Lynn first moved to Wyoming in 1968, Jim was still working in New York as an illustrator, which I think was pretty challenging to find models and to find support in Wyoming, but he really wanted to start working on his own work. And he started photographing his friends and neighbors and then making portraits of them, and he ended up with some really successful shows in New York City. And I want to just read a review in Art News by Garrett Henry of Bama's one-man show at New York's Co-Care Gallery in 1977. And this was the exhibition that allowed Jim to just completely leave the illustrating career behind and start painting Westerners. Garrett Henry said, "Bama's is Western art of the sort that any self-respecting art critic is automatically required to sneer at. But it's hard to sneer. This show represents 7 years of work, but work alone is not enough to earn Bama respect. In a supernaturalistic style that makes New York photorealism look like action painting, Bama paints heroes of the contemporary West. A young Sioux Indian in dungaree jacket, jeans, and tribal necklaces, a saddle bronc rider, cowboys, ancient Indian chieftains, and mountain men. Bama cites as his artistic heroes Norman Rockwell and Andrew Wyeth, but he is a more impressive painter than either. He takes the true stuff of American myth, Olympian figures of a dying past, and reinstates them in our cultural consciousness, tempering his surrealism with romanticism and his romanticism with the keenest of eyes for the possible psychological havoc wreaked on these men by being living figments of our history. The introduction of high emotional and even spiritual content into the photorealist mode gives the lie to most New York-based painting of the kind. Bama's style may be sheer technology, but it is technology in service of its content. For all its desert-like stretches, Wyoming has proved a fertile ground for painting of a very unfashionable, very powerful sort. So I believe that Bama's body of photographs taken as a whole comprise both a history of the 1970s and 80s in Wyoming and an intimate portrait of the modern and mythic American West. Bama told Peter Hasrick in 1976 he already had about 400 or 500 studies in various stages, and I could just sit down and paint until my dying day. He left more than 40 banker-sized boxes full of 11 by 14 images in the care of the Center of the West. So in preparation for this exhibition, the Whitney's assistant curator, Dr. Ashley Espinal, and I went through all 40 of those boxes, and then with great difficulty narrowed the exhibition down to about 115 images. And then we were really glad that the Heritage Center took about another 35, so probably about 150 altogether. It would have taken, Jim painted about a painting a month with his photorealistic style. It took some time. And it would have taken more than 10 lifetimes for him just to paint his best photos. So I guess that's one of the reasons for having a photo exhibition. We can really see the breadth of the fantastic images that he took, the interesting people that he photographed. So the photographs were just the first step in Bama's artistic process. He collaborated with each model, experimented with clothing, lighting, backgrounds, and props. After shooting at least a roll of film, in the old days, Lynn printed contact sheets, and later Larry Leibel took over the darkroom work. Bama used a grease pencil to mark his favorites and establish cropping. And you can see some of the crop marks, for instance, on that. And that. And then this one became this image and this drawing. So let's see. He made pencil sketches on vellum to finalize the composition and established the color palette using thumbnail paintings. And then he finally transferred the composition to a board using a projector. There's an example of his color studies, and they're tiny, probably a couple inches wide, 2 by 4-ish. So Bama made portraits of a wide variety of people, but his favorite subject was old-timers. He said, I always wanted to paint old people like Norman Rockwell did. Here I had this gold mine, all my childhood reminiscences of the history of the West. So when Lynn and Jim first moved here, they lived up the South Fork, and Anson Eddy was nearby. This was very early, one of his portraits, 1969, just the year after they moved here. Jim said, I painted a lot of old-time Westerners, cowboys, Indians, outfitters, people with wrinkles, but I painted them as people. That they were Westerners was incidental. If I had gone to New England as I first intended, I would have painted wrinkled fishermen. Bama returned to photographing Anson Eddy over time. Eddy was a self-made mountain man, lived in an isolated cabin with 40 cats for company, and made his living by trapping and guiding. Eric Rossborough, our librarian, one of our librarians, has a fantastic article in Points West that talks about Anson Eddy. Oh, and you can see here on this photo on the right, there's a small image taped on, and that was part of his work method. I think it allowed him to see both the big picture and the details at the same time as he was painting. So you can tell when the images are taped on like that, unfortunately using nasty masking tape, that it was probably an image that he made a painting of. Although, if you look at that image, and then you look at least this painting, it's a different source photo. I guess he spent a long time working on those logs. Jim said, I use the West to say what I want about life. There are tremendous virtues, the older people, the hardships they endured, and the whole settling of the West, which is really a heroic saga and something that we desperately cling to and seek to reincarnate in our contemporary lives, values that we no longer have. I think it's a wonderful vehicle to express for me personally. So he was intrigued by the old timers who hung around on a street corner in downtown Cody. And Slim was the first that he met and photographed and made portraits of. And Slim, in turn, introduced him to some of the other old timers who became his models and friends, such as Roy Bazona. Of Slim, Jim said, Slim was the most wonderful looking old cowboy, but he was too old and busted up to do ranch work anymore. Jim made 9 paintings of Slim. And I think I really like the real context of the photos as opposed to where he's taken another image and put behind him in some of his paintings. Just to see Slim as a broken down cowboy that's had to move to town, and there's his stucco apartment building behind him. Roy Bazona was born on July 10, 1890, the same day Wyoming became a state. He was a cowboy, sheep herder, homesteader, and helped build the roads in Yellowstone National Park. Bama photographed him in 1970 and 71, indoors and out, sometimes focusing on his face, sometimes making weathered buildings part of the composition. And just look at the beautiful lighting that Jim accomplished in these photos. All of the photos in the exhibition, by the way, are original prints. Timberjack Joe. By the way, if you Google Timberjack Joe, you can get to a song about him. I did that earlier today, and I've got it stuck in my head still. He was born in 1911 as Joseph Ernest Lind. He was a favorite model, and he worked as a sheep herder, farmer, logger, and miner. His life was a fantasy of the mythic West, spent trapping, guiding, attending rendezvous fairs, reenactments, and parades, dressed as a historic mountain man. This jacket that he's wearing, in order to make this jacket, he hunted the deer, tanned it, and then sewed it. Of Timberjack Joe, Slim Pickens said, I believe the good Lord played an awful trick on Timberjack Joe by putting him here in this day and age, but thank God he did, because now the rest of us know how a real mountain man looked, dressed, and smelled. I think Jim loved reaching back into history through these people that he made portraits of. Grandma Slack was born in 1875 on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. When she was 17, she fell in love with a stagecoach driver, married, and moved with him to the newly established Cody area. Francis Setting Eagle was 94, eldest living Arapaho at the time, revered as a tribal leader and keeper of the drum. He was incredibly fragile when he posed for Bama, who said, older people are almost like objects or still lives. You can prop them up, but what can you do with a 94-year-old man? You can't move him. You just can't do very much with him. It's just enough to be able to sit up. And again, on this photo compared to the painting that he made from that same image, it's interesting that he's substituted a different background, and he did that frequently. He had a lot of source images of crumbling walls that he would insert into the photos. At the time of this photograph, it was taken at the centennial of the Buffalo Bills Wild West show in 1983. Marrowbone and Webb were the oldest of the living original performers. And again, just even though this is a grab shot, right? He couldn't pose this. The composition is just amazing. I love that the young mother and child are framed between them. And also just that interaction. He caught such a great moment. Work in the West. Jim said, occasionally I will do anecdotal things. For instance, people riding horseback in the snow, but I really don't look for it. once in a while, I'll go somewhere and by chance find a terrific model who happens to be doing those things, but basically I get people and isolate them. And we did find a few really wonderful shots that he took on location of people working in the West. It was something that very much interested him, but I think it was a challenge for him to take group shots of people in general. Okay, so this is one of my favorites. Notice how they've kicked off their muck boots to go riding. And they've got the saddles and ropes, yeah. Dee Dee Fails. Are you here, Dee Dee? Yeah. I love the banner of you up in the front. I hope you do. Yeah, so the photo on the right was used for a painting that apparently Burt Reynolds bought from the gallery in New York. Bob Edgar. Bama took many photos of his good friend Bob Edgar. And he also frequently photographed models at Old Trail Town using the old cabins, wagons, and props in the background. He said, Jim said of the reenactors, they are trying to live out a fantasy. And my fantasy has always been to paint people living out their fantasies. Just like a soldier in a uniform or a football player in his uniform, you become what the uniform makes you. He really liked taking images of people with good beards. Rusty Ryan, the man on the left, was a national bullwhip champion. And in his holster are pieces of paper that he'd throw into the air and snap in half. Which way did they go? Oh, let's see. Oh, I like this quote, too. I found young people more pliable, and I can relate more to young people because I'm very young in spirit, and you can work better with young people. And we have quite a bit of focus on young people in this exhibition, and I feel like when Jim started his Western portraiture, that was on the wrong slide. Oh, well. Anyway, when he started his portraiture, he was very interested in old-timers, and I think as that generation passed, and also just as he's a very curious and interested person. He became interested in photographing younger people. He said, 3 of my passions have always been sports, show business, and the circus, and rodeo is all 3. He said, this is a fellow I photographed at a rodeo. They had a lot of cool-looking guys there and tough-looking guys. They were very Western. He got a lot of subject matter at the rodeos. May and Cody. This is another one of my favorite images. I love just the symbolism of these young people sitting on a fence. They're between events, and they're kind of between childhood and adulthood, and then it's just such a great casual photo of the young people and their conversation, and the pickup trucks lined up behind them. Yeah. This photo is so striking, and this did become a painting. Beautiful regalia. And this swirl. This is the same man, young man photographed for 1979 and 1987, so 8 years apart. So generally, Bama portrayed his native subjects, quote, as being part of 2 worlds, part modern mainstream culture and part reservation Indian. By placing his models against a cracked and worn wall, Bama emphasizes the young men's existence in the middle ground between the two worlds. It was 1974, which was just a year after the American Indian Movement protests at Wounded Knee. Bama organized a photo shoot during an intertribal basketball tournament in Denver, where he photographed 17 young activists. He said, quote, "These are sophisticated young Indians, sharp guys, very aware of what's going on. They're not about to sit back passively and endure injustice." So this was the model for one of the paintings that's in the Whitney collection. This is the same man, kind of showing that two worlds viewpoint. Wes Studi. Bama met Wes Studi at a performance of Bobby Bridger's Seekers of the Fleece musical in Cody very early in Studi's career and asked permission to photograph him. The background on the color photo looks a lot like the hills behind the Bama's house near Wapiti. We see that in a fair number of photos along with Old Trail Town. What a great face. Again, showing Clayton Small in Two Worlds. He became a consultant for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Northern Cheyenne. Ken Blackboard, I hope Ken made it tonight. Yeah? So the painting on the right came from an image that he made when Ken was about 19. And Jim saw him wearing a Sioux buffalo horn headdress and buckskins in the Cody Frontier Festival and asked permission to photograph him. They became friends, and Bama mentored him in photography. Ken said that he really learned a lot about how to light his subjects from Jim. Oh, yeah. Let's see. How do I do this? Yeah. So this is Rick Williams. You can see the painting on the left is in our collection. It's up in the Granger Gallery, their mezzanine gallery right now. And the source photo for it, which is in the exhibition. Rick Williams had an amazing career working as an advocate for his people. He worked for the American Indian College Fund for 15 years, has also done a lot of legal work. We had an interview with him in the process of this exhibition. I just want to play a short clip of it.
I look at that and I think, damn, I was skinny. And I think about that, and I think about growing up and not having the resources to have, food and struggling all the time and I think that, in a lot of ways, seeing myself skin and bones like that brings back memories of those times when we were constantly struggling to survive, but also looking at it reminds me how passionate we were about wanting to try to change the world and wanting to change the future of Indian people, how to make people aware of the wrongs that were going on and really championing the cause of Indian people. And I think that's clearly reflected in every one of the photographs. This is a very interesting select group of people who were at the heart of a movement to change the world for Indian people.
One of the things that I'm really interested in when I look at portraits is what was the relationship between the model and the artist? How much of what you see is the person expressing themselves, and how much is the artist kind of imposing their own ideas on the subject? And I asked Rick about that, and he said, the only thing that I'm wearing that's mine is the choker. But he does feel that this photo very much reflects where he was at the time, and he's really proud of it. This is where I meant to read that quote about young people. being more pliable, so on. I really like with the images of young people, kind of seeing how traditions are being passed down, seeing how the young people are taking on the attributes, the clothing, the regalia of their elders, the kind of cultural transmission that's taking place. And Jim said, I've always wanted to paint this, but never did. This was at Crow Fair. There were a lot of great-looking kids all dressed up in powwow finery. And such a beautiful image. He sketched it, just never quite got around to painting it. And if anybody knows the names of these kids, do tell. I mean, we found, our library did amazing research and found the names, or at least the dates of almost everything, but it was hard with the kids. So this is a section of the show where we're showing, again, that kind of cultural transmission as well as sometimes genetic transmission. we call these copy and paste. And it's hard to have a favorite image in this show, but I don't know, this one, it really grows on me, this little girl with her bag of Doritos. She's the same one who was shawl dancing earlier. I need to say some thank yous. I'm happy to say some thank yous. First of all, to the John Bunker Sands Photography Gallery Endowment that gives us funding every year to create exhibitions for our photography gallery. Let's see, and we received support from Wyoming Humanities, and they're supporting the reception tonight. So really huge thank you to them. The catalog that we're going to put together is sponsored in part by the American Heritage Center. And we've received printed materials and digital interpretation in-kind support from Bluebird Connect. One of the things that you'll see in the gallery is barcodes. The first time you click on a barcode, you have to download the app. It's free. They don't ask for any personal information. That same app will work at other museums all over the country. It was actually designed for the Met, and you will find the same app at many great institutions. We have additional content, little audio clips, extended information if you click on those barcodes. I want to really thank my co-curator, Dr. Ashley Espinal, and so many other people who contributed their time, treasure, and talent, especially to James Bama, who donated his photographs, sketches, and archival materials to the center. We received more than 5,000 negatives, almost 2,500 drawings. In addition, there are 94 paintings ranging from small color studies to large watercolors and four fully realized oil paintings. We also, I have to recognize Lynn Bama's generous participation behind the scenes, identifying models, providing background information, gently correcting our mistakes, and just generally helping us to get to know Jim Bama as a warm, gregarious human being who dedicated his life to making art and connecting with people. I won't say all of my, all the thank yous that I have on the panel, but I really do want to recognize the entire staff of the McCracken Research Library. Cassandra Day, Eric Rossborough, Mac Frost, Nathan Bender, and Judy Caldwell, led by Susan Fletcher. They provided physical and digital access to the photographs, scanned them, located interviews and articles, identified models, recorded oral histories with many of Bama's friends, neighbors, and models. I believe they're up to probably 17 oral histories at this point. They just did 2 more today. Their research is integral to this exhibition, and it'll be treasured by future scholars and audiences.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I'd also like to recognize Samantha Harper and Mary Robinson and Mac Frost. I don't know if you mentioned Mac.
Oh, yeah. I only mentioned our current, but you're right. Mary Robinson and Mac Frost had a lot to do with this, and Samantha Harper in bringing this collection in and getting it at least partially cataloged. Yeah, thank you. And just in closing, I want to say that taken as a group, these spectacular images comprise a history of the contemporary West. Bama's photos provide a record of continuance and the transmission of cultural traditions. Like other celebrated portrait photographers, Jim made his images in true collaboration with his models, giving them the opportunity to perform and preserve their identities. He said, "I've been taking pictures out here for almost 40 years, and I've got a record of all the old timers. A guy who drove a 24-horse steam stagecoach, the oldest living Arapaho Indian who was in Tim McCoy's Wild West show and performed in front of Queen Victoria and was in the silent movie Covered Wagon. I caught a lot of these people when they were in their 90s. And Robert Yellowtail, who was a famous Crow Indian chief. I got them not only in my artwork, but in the photography. We at the Center of the West are proud and grateful to be the stewards of Bama's photograph sketches and archives. I am thrilled to share this aspect of a wonderful artist with the members of and visitors to the Center of the West. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and enjoy the exhibition. I'll take questions if anybody'd like, but let's go see the show.